Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I think I'd like to get started so we have our whole hour together. This is the third in our Lent Wilderness series. We're sharing wilderness stories from members of the congregation, and on Wednesday evenings we're sharing wilderness stories from the Bible. Some of you have been here all the 3 weeks that we've done this so far, and some of you haven't, so I'm just going to go through the structure of what we're doing so everybody's on the same page. This type of story sharing is technically called a witnessing conversation. It's a way, actually I think I have a slide about this, so I'm not making it up. A witnessing conversation is meant to open up a story and process both what was said and what was heard. Not always the same thing, right? We do that out loud and in a group, so it is a demonstration of the power of storytelling in real time. And the trick to this type of story telling and listening is to just listen. This is much more difficult than it sounds. You think, oh, I just sit there and listen. No, you are an active participant as you're listening. It means letting go of the to-do list that's happening in your brain for what needs to happen this afternoon before you go back to work on Monday. It means letting go of the board of directors meeting that happens in my brain all the time, usually at 2 a.m. It means paying attention to how you're reacting to the story. So if you gasp or sigh, or you think, oh, I want to know more about that, pay attention. What parts of the story were you drawn to? What words, images, or pictures came to your mind? What values were evident? What did you learn about the kind of person the storyteller is? When we share stories about ourselves, we're sharing something about who we are. So who is our storyteller today? What can you learn about her through the story she's telling? What touched you or made you feel something personally, not professionally, not academically, okay? I'm not here to, we're not here to, the way I've been saying this, and it's not really fair, but the way I've been saying this is about your heart and not your head, okay? And we have 4 amazing people sharing stories with us, and I'm not exactly sure they knew what they were getting into when we asked them initially, but they've all been gracious enough to show up and tell their stories. And so I'd like to get to our story right away. So I'd like to introduce you to Marge Crawford, who will be sharing with us this morning. Thank you so much, Marge. Thank you.
Hi all. I see many familiar faces.
Can you hear in the back? No?
I see many familiar faces, yes. And some of you, it's great that you showed up this morning. I was sort of hoping that the storm arrived last night. To do this, but that's not the case, so I am prepared. Wasn't this morning, if you got to the 8:30 service, wasn't it delicious watching those wonderful children tell us a story and learn from them? Their enthusiasm was delightful. When my invitation came to speak to you, this morning, boy, on my topic of choice, about a time or times when I experienced wilderness, that overwhelming loss of direction that left me adrift and without resources to handle the challenges coming my way. I thought, where do I start? 10 minutes isn't much for almost 80 years on this planet. Everyone ages differently, and many of my wilderness stories are truly the stories of others, of my children, my parents, my friends, whom I loved and was very involved with. And while they greatly added to the stresses in my life, I learned a lot from them. Mostly that they're not my stories to tell. So I'm sharing my perspective on aging, a process that we all face one way or another, hopefully sometimes with joy. As the youngest of 3 children by 9 years, I was a surprise to my parents and my older siblings. From my earliest memories, I was surrounded by tall people who knew everything and could navigate this world. Fortunately, the first 20 to 25 years of our life are developmental. We're rewarded for trying. We grow, we learn, and if we're blessed, we do that in a family that cares for us. We socialize by reaching out beyond family through church and school and work. And then 25 came in, boom. I'm married with a child, a husband in school, after serving in the Air Force in Alaska during the Vietnam War, me working at a job supporting a family, and suddenly aware that there are many problems beyond my control, even my awareness. The years between 20 and 25 flew by so quickly, it seemed as though my wildernesses were being processed at warp speed. A second child, a divorce, returning to college so typing wouldn't be my only means of support. Debt, graduate school, death of a parent, suicide attempt of a child. Caring for a father with Alzheimer's. Each one carried with it a wilderness experience of its own. Those wilderness experiences taught me a lot, and I don't mean to gloss over the depth of them, but again, they're not my story to tell always. Being the youngest in my family of origin, I was used to lots of successes and support. Lots of support, not financially, but in all other ways. Meals, child care, interest in successes, forgiveness of failures. I was also raised to help others, and I developed amazing relationships through this helping others phase. I'm blessed with family and friends. I had lots of energy to put into relationships and work. I didn't see the upside of forming a primary relationship when my marriage ended in so much chaos. I continued to be curious and to learn, which is another way to avoid aging. I continued to think, I'll know when this or that happens, or this is only temporary. Deferring adulting, deferring acceptance for another day. And by 55, I almost felt like an adult. Physical problems seemed to catch up with me. As an obese person most of my life, my self-image was poor. Lots of effort went into Weight Watchers, exercise, walking every morning. It wasn't that I didn't try, but the stresses led to a poor fast food diet, supplemented by Diet Coke and Cheetos. And guilt for that, because I knew better. My mother was a dietitian. So at 55, I experienced my first time with a walker, plantar fasciitis. First time with orthopedic shoes. I'd always liked shoes, they fit better than clothes. First time with a boss who wasn't interested in my ideas. First time as a homeowner. And at 60, I became a mother-in-law twice, followed at 61 by a grandmother, best title ever. And while still 61, a retiree and job seeker. I tried to find something fulfilling to do while working part-time. I learned that part-time commitment for me was not very well paid, and I couldn't blame places for looking for dedicated staff. So I volunteered a little, traveled a little, joined like-minded souls in book club for lunch. I was trained as a census taker, took a half-time job as the registrar for a summer academic experience. I helped Pastor Margaret with upcycling as a craft form and took weaving classes. And then came the opportunity to become a Stephen minister, which has been a wonderful experience. I worked out with friends, experienced the pandemic with all of you, and was diagnosed with breast cancer, type 2 diabetes, degenerating knee and ankle joints that needed replacing, and other less alarming maladies. And that was how I aged. I'm sure you can identify with parts of this story. I know that I am not alone, and I know that my story isn't the worst. I'm not certain I'd be here today without the knowledge that I am a child of God. He claims me as his own. I was raised Presbyterian, and when we returned from Alaska with a child in 1970, I joined St. Matthew's. It was the church of my in-laws and close to home. I taught Sunday school. After our divorce, I asked Pastor Miller if I should start looking for a new church home. He told me to wait a while, and 56 years later, I'm still here. Pastor Ed started a group of single mothers single mothers of boys, where it was helpful to share stories and frustrations. And we started small groups in the late 1980s where we studied books of the Bible in groups of 10, meeting in members' homes. These formed great relationships and friendships that I still treasure. A group of women met at 6 a.m. one day a week, sometimes at church, sometimes in the park, encouraging each other to work on this journey. I remember sitting in one of those after my son was hospitalized, saying, "Help me understand why this is happening to me." Most recently, being held in the circle of St. Matthew's through 3 surgeries in 10 months and the better part of a year at home, through a prayer shawl, a food train, and caring visits, cards, phone calls, have made me feel more whole than I've ever felt in my life. I am grateful. I am blessed. And it seems as though there is more to come. More joy and more challenges. More time in a state of wilderness, perhaps. It becomes more familiar and less frightening because I know God is with me, as are his earthly angels.
I'd like to take a moment to honor the story that Marge has shared with us and for you to just sit with it and digest it for a moment. So we'll just have some silence for a little bit. Thank you again, Marge. Thank you. So read over these one more time. And then here are some other questions that might help you think about how to share with your group. What made you yearn, smile, sigh, or gasp? What captured your imagination? Was there anything new, or did Marge help you think about something in a new way? What of your own personal experiences lit up or came into your memory as you were listening? Where was God or the Spirit? Were there any holy moments? So what I'd like to do now is ask you, like 3 or 4 people, not a big group, because I'd like everybody to be able to share, to get together and talk about what you heard. So you can move, you can turn your chairs, you can talk to one another, please.
What stood out? What stood out to me was but Jesus well, not that it wasn't there before, this job what's not on that would be I don't know how long it was. Church thinking, that would be one that would be like, hold on, I gotta stop. It's really hard. Here's somebody who's talking about this part of the story. Now I'm starting to feel like, oh, I was constantly, I can imagine my child trying to kill himself. I don't know. There is nothing to say. At least not for me. And I would hope that it's pretty similar.
Answers that
How is that together? How is it?
yeah, my legs survive. I'm not lots of things vulnerable. What you share here. We're trying to accept that things that are yeah, we enjoy that. You're a guard of
So that's 30 years of figuring it out. And then at 55, then it was, what are the ailments that are taking it? All healthy. It's like, oh, I just figured it out. Oh, I'm just starting to get the hang of this. Oh, my knee went bad.
Okay, everybody, let's come back.
Yeah, put you in
You need to turn your chairs around, please do. Let's start with any reactions that you had in your body. Did anybody smile or sigh or gasp or have some kind of physical reaction to Marge's story? Anybody? Yes, sir.
I guess I smiled because when you started talking about Alaska, my brother lives up in Alaska, and they have a small daughter, and it just made me think of him. You talking, living in Alaska, and the Air Force. He's in the Air Force as well too. So I made that connection and made me, smile and think about him.
That's your own personal experience that
Yeah.
lit up
Yep.
for you when she was talking. Yeah. What else? Yes, sir.
When she said about having a kid when she was 25, we weren't divorced, but I could still really identify with having a baby and no money.
Yeah. Having a baby and no money and being far away, right?
Yeah, we were away from family.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the reason I live here instead of in Colorado, because I was like, oh, I could not do this by myself. What else? Katie?
It made me smile and also sigh at the same time when she talked about having a group for single moms of boy moms.
Yeah.
Because that is a very specific type of mom, and having my 2 boys first and then a 4-year gap. There's a very distinct difference between my sons and my daughter, but then also the parenting experiences.
Yeah.
And being really frustrated when you walked out of a situation with only girl moms and
Yeah.
you're sitting there destroyed. And you're like, all right, we're leaving before we break anything else. And I have someone who can understand that, especially as a single parent. My sister is a single mom with 2 boys. It made me smile and then also made me kind of sigh, okay, where can we get that now?
Yeah. Where can we have that kind of support?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Andy?
The same, the moms coming together as a small group, being vulnerable with each other about walking the paths as single mothers for boys, and just going to the parks and just forming those relationships that last, decades and decades. Just, I think there's a blessing in that vulnerability that you all shared with each other. So that's what made me smile.
Yeah. Yeah, Jill.
Just that Pastor Ed, I didn't realize he started so many groups. So he started this boy group, he started our cancer support group. Just what an influence he was.
Still, the ripples are
Yeah,
still
yeah.
going, right? Yeah, Carl.
I love your courage. I mean it. To be a divorcee and stick around in your ex-husband's church and family. To be divorced, that tendency to break away and form your own world and your own life and your new identity. And I think that helped me to hear Miller said, do you stick around for a while before you make a decision? You wouldn't be here today if you hadn't been encouraged to say.
What else did you hear, or what did you talk about in your groups that kind of stuck out to you? Yeah, Paul.
I heard, okay, gotta be careful how I say this, it's gonna come out wrong no matter what. I heard everybody's got challenges and we all deal with them in one way, shape, or form, and we move forward. That's good. What I didn't have any sense of how to deal with was the attempted suicide of a child.
Yeah.
That would have floored me, and I don't know if I could have got up.
Yeah.
Or how I would have got up. I would have got up, but I don't know how. Right? Because you don't have a choice. You got to get up and keep moving on. But I don't know how I would have done it. So, good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And imagination-wise, I can only try to imagine what that would have been like. I would never be silly enough to say, I know what you felt like. Because no, how could you?
Yeah. Good for you. You'd be a good Stephen minister. Yeah, one of the things that
Well, I have time now, don't you know?
Yeah. One of the things that kind of, I think I started getting a little tense when you kind of listed in pretty rapid succession these different wilderness times in your life. So like divorced, suicide attempt of a child, death of a parent, you know, you kind of went through them. And then you said, I'm not glossing over this or making light of the depth of all of these things, but it occurred to me that when you're privileged to live 80 years, that's just what your life's gonna look like, right? But not just one wilderness time, but many times of going through the wilderness. And that, and you said something about aging as well, and I can't think of it now, but that you only get to go through the wilderness that many times if you've been privileged to live a long life, right? And to age, that aging in and of itself is a privilege, right? Because you're still here. You're still here. Yes?
I think also what stood out, and I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but it was something like, I'm paraphrasing, I became an adult at 25, but I really didn't think I grew up until I was 55.
Yeah.
That's what I heard, okay? What's that?
That's what she said too. You were right on the money.
But, and I I understand that, because it's like you look back on life, I get it now.
Yeah.
And what do they say? Something is wasted on the youth.
Yeah, and that I think you said that people are developing until they're 25, right? Like the frontal lobe doesn't really develop until you're 25, and you were married and had kids at 25, right?
45.
And that at 55, you felt like maybe you'd grown up. Yeah. What else? Steve?
It struck out to me what a survivor she is.
Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate survivor.
Yeah.
To just go forward from one thing to another and not be defeated.
Yeah.
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 Took a real strength.
Yeah, in that long list, there was a cancer diagnosis, right? And 3 surgeries in a month? 10 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, surviving, or like you were saying, Paul, like keep moving forward, right? That there are things that probably brought you to your knees, but you were still moving forward. Yeah, Nancy.
Her resilience.
Yeah.
And I think maybe she learned that as a child, because she had to depend on herself for the things that she wasn't getting from her family.
Yeah.
So that carried her forward in good stead with all the wilderness moments that she had to encounter.
Yeah.
She was resilient and persevered and
Resilience, perseverance, survivor, moving forward. What else? Yeah, Chuck.
It really made me think about, I grew up with an older sister and my mom and dad. My younger sister, 7 years younger than I am, had a completely different family experience. And the thing I see is that she's probably way more independent than me or my older sister. And I think that you as that child that's come along with that
The
much.
surprise.
The
surprise baby,
But there was
yeah.
definitely a surprise in life.
Yeah.
And you just have to develop differently and become more independent, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Chase, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, she had a comment about you can defer aging by being open and curious and asking questions. I really like that, because I think a lot of the time you think of aging as going through a lot of the aches and pains and kind of not being able to do a whole lot, and that kind of dwindling down, but like you can always have that mentality of like, I'm gonna be curious about this, I'm gonna have fun with this, and like that mentality I think is like what gets you to an older age and still enjoying life, which I think is very inspiring.
Yeah, so there's not a whole lot you can do about physical decline, right? Like that's just what it is. But there's a certain elasticity of mind that comes with being open, being curious, asking questions, meeting new people, right? And finding out why they are the way they are or what makes them tick. You know, and you can, at any age, be really cemented in your own views and opinions and the way that the world works, or you can be kind of elastic. There you go, elastic in how you look at people and the world and why it is the way it is. Right? Yes.
A contrast struck me where there have been ladies here at St. Matt's that have told John, you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. And then contrast with what you just said, how you move on and create and look for things new and be interested, and that's what keeps you going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trudy.
I'd like to expand on that a little bit because it is not always the individual who has to be flexible, but the people around you. I can't tell you how many times I have people tell me, oh, well, you don't look like you're as old as you are, or you shouldn't be, as Don said, doing this, because they've got this preconceived notion of what you do when you're 80 or 90 or whatever. It's like the individual has been lost and there's just this preconceived notion that you are now in this mold.
Yes.
It's so wrong.
It is. And you break all those molds for me, Trudy. You do. You do. Oh, yes, Julie.
I was struck by how often community was part of her support system.
Yeah.
The different groups over time, not always the same group, you know,
Right.
but
I was going to say that I was struck by that as well, that there's a thread of community through your whole story, and that it may have been like single moms with boys, or it may have been Stephen ministers, or it may have been St. Matthew's in general, bringing meals or sending cards, or but that you helped others, but it sounds like you also received help as you went along. Does receiving help get easier? Does it? Okay, yes, it does for all of you out there. Anything else? Yeah?
You know, I was thinking about, but growing up, my father used to always say, we'd be scared that we had a challenge ahead of us. He'd say, God gets you ready, has gotten you ready for what you're going to encounter in life. And I thought of that in regard to her, because while she didn't focus on just one wilderness experience, she focused on a lifetime, and you could see in that where the first challenge strengthened her in a way and gave her some skills and some wherewithal to face the next one. So as she went through, does that make sense?
It does.
That God was preparing her for the next thing that was coming, in a sense, and she relied on God.
So maybe that's a place in her story where you see God active.
Yeah, that she was using this experience to handle better this next experience, and she was gathering.
She's chuckling a little bit. Let me check in here. Is that true, Marge?
I don't know that I've ever handled the experience. I think reverting to the learner mentality, and that we don't know it all, and that we can rely on others, and that we can both give and take. The taking part has been really hard, but I'll tell you quickly how I.
You want to come up here?
Oops. How I learned to receive.
Oh yes.
Was I fell flat on my face taking the garbage out one day, and I hit the top of the recycled bin, and then I hit the concrete. Didn't break anything, so lucky, 34 scans, and 2 days later, they released me. So, and then 3 months later, I was helping with communion, and I fell flat on the floor in the sacristy. And Don Harold came up and said, I think you need to go for a stitch. You don't need a ambulance. And Marion offered to take me. Those two things took whatever shyness I had away from me, because I wasn't able to do it. I had a purple face for 2 out of 3 months, and also withdrew to home. But the only way I handled things was with my family and friends, and my kids had grown up seeing all of me, not just mom, not just, but oh boy, she's been through some things. And they are now 50 and 56, and they still call, but they don't live here. And I'm still proud of them. So I thank you for your feedback. But I never got through anything alone, and I have always felt, although I haven't always been a good child, I've always felt as though God were in my corner. I've always felt as though He were there. Carl?
You were, as an only child in a way, and you have such a rich imagination, it becomes reality for you. You must have been a reader as a little kid.
I am, and I'm still a pretty strong reader.
A reader, fiction?
A voracious reader.
That's what I feel.
But this is not fiction. This was not.
You think of yourself as a survivor, and I mean that in a good way.
I think of myself as blessed. I don't necessarily think of I am a survivor. I'm 80, or will be in a few weeks. And I think we've all survived a lot. I think all of us in this room have survived a lot. All of us in this room have stories and challenges and wilderness experiences that we need to be sure we've shared with someone, because experiencing them ourselves and alone doesn't move us forward, sticks us in the same place, keeps us alone, keeps us confused. I always tell my kids that if it doesn't get out of your head, you can't do very much about it. And find someone you trust.
That's the hard part.
Find someone you love. Share that with another. And try to and then try to keep yourself going in the meantime. So I don't know if that's.
That's something that's kind of connected all three of our wilderness stories thus far, is that all three of our storytellers have spent time reflecting and thinking and learning and telling their story to others. And I think that's a great piece of wisdom, that no matter what you're going through, if you're isolated or if it just lives in your head or in your heart or in your body and it doesn't go anywhere, that you won't go anywhere either. You won't learn from that, or, I mean, you might keep living and moving forward, but not integrating that story into the rest of your life and learning something from it. Yes?
I have a burning curiosity of when you went back to college, and then I think you said grad school, what did you study?
I studied management and communication at Alverno's Weekend College while I worked and raised the kids. And then I did a master's at Whitewater in school business management.
I know, right? There's 10 other stories right there, right? Anything else? Okay. How about where did you see God or the Spirit in Marge's story? Yeah, Katie.
I think it goes back to one of the small groups when you were talking about how you showed up after your child attempted suicide and how you were able to go to this group and be vulnerable. That's what I picked up on in the story, because I heard something a while back and it's really stuck with me, and it's, where do the casseroles go? And we think about sending the casserole when someone has surgery or they broke their leg or someone is deployed, but we don't think about where the casserole goes when it's a mental health concern, and how the casseroles don't show up for that person. The mom, the brother, the whatever, whoever else is affected by this ripple. And I think it's so beautiful to hear that there was a group that you could go and be vulnerable with, because while it was your child who attempted, you were the mother. And so going off of like what Paul said before, like I couldn't even imagine what that was like, because your experiences were so unique to you, and still being mom, having that mom hat on and caring for your child, so being that support during that time. I can only imagine how rewarding it was to have people that you could be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
And that's clearly God showing up.
Yeah, and that's God showing up, and I heard, and maybe it was God who gave you the strength to do this, but that you kept showing up too, right, to these different groups, or after getting divorced showed up at church. There are lots of people who get divorced and never show up to church again, right? And that there's like there's a power and a vulnerability in showing up and continuing to show up. Yeah, Carl.
I heard you understanding the depth of give us this day our daily bread, and that you are fed by people, and that's your food, and you've had to give up food, kind of. I just think that's so, and then forgive us our sins, which comes next, that openness. I didn't hear 1 ounce of judgment in your whole presentation, not 1 ounce.
Yeah, did anybody hear judgment in Marge's story? You're even kind to your ex-husband.
He's gone.
Thank you, Jesus.
What else? Where was God, or where was the movement of the Spirit?
When I stayed at church, it was because his parents were here, and I really felt my children needed to know who they were, and they were a big part of his story. He was pretty good about seeing them once a year until his mother passed away.
Once a year?
Once a year. We lived in different states.
Oh.
We had traveled for a job. I came back rather than staying where I wasn't wanted. But that was, and I could talk to Pastor Miller. St. Matthew's has just been the best church community home I ever could imagine, and I am eternally grateful.
Could we put that on TV?
Okay, so now we've done this a little bit already, but I'd like to ask Marge to come on back up. And having heard all of these responses to your story, first of all, what's it been like to share your story in front of an audience?
I like to talk with groups of 4 to 5 people. I'm nervous about this. I remember in school we had to do a videotape conversation, and I was in front of podium on wheels, and I walked the podium right back to the camera. It's been affirming. I can't tell you how generous your comments have been. They make me feel wholer, more whole. They make me feel good about the reflection that I did. All these smiling faces make me feel like I didn't insult anyone during the process. And I really tried I tried to be aware of your journeys as well.
Wow.
And I hope your journeys are more comfortable and more and less anxiety producing. I hope your health is growing and that you're learning to take care of yourselves in a way that makes you more whole. And that's how I feel about this.
Marge came up to me before the 8:30 service and said, I just wanted to let you know I didn't sleep in. But I could tell you were nervous. Did what you hear from the group help you think about your story in a new or different way?
Well, it's my life and I'm pretty used to it, so having all the affirmations has been wonderful. And affirmation is a skill we attempt to learn in Stephen Ministry. And I have to tell you, you're all better at it than I am. That giving affirmations doesn't somehow come easily. And you have been amazing. So thank you. And what have I learned? I've learned that I am blessed. I've learned that I am fortunate to be in this community, and I hope you won't kick me out. Thank you. All of you. Any other thoughts that you want to share before we're done today? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
El Verno teaches me some of those good things.
Yep.
And you just have to think that you're talking to 4 or 5 people. And also that you got a lot of different affirmations, but they were from different people. You didn't have to get them all from one person. So it was a group effort to talk to you, you know, and to tell you that we love you, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was our third. Next week will be our last wilderness story. Katie's here today. Did this make you more or less nervous to come here today?
Oh, less.
Less? Okay.
Yay.
Good. And if this is something that you've been enjoying or getting something out of, I'd love to talk to you. And this is something that Andy said last week, like, how could we continue to do something like this? Maybe not necessarily wilderness stories, but just other types of storytelling. So let me know if this has been a good experience for you. And I think that's all we have for today. Let's give Marge one more. Oh, Chuck.
Well, just one observation is you were talking about how your groups that you were a part of over the years helped you get through things. And I think that should be a lesson to St. Matthew's that we have to continue. You know, I know our small groups fell apart a few years ago, and that's something we should get back, because I think everybody benefits by having the opportunities to be. I'm in a small group in Monday morning Bible study, but you know, I think everybody needs to have these little small groups. It's been a very important part of my life and our life. And so I think that's something that should be a priority for our church here.
Yes, and we are working on that, and it will be launched in the fall, not long after Rally Day. But some small groups that go along with the grant money that I got for my sabbatical, and that St. Matthew's got, to have groups come together, and then we get to like send you out to dinner on the Lilly Foundation at the end of your time together. And of course you can keep meeting, it doesn't have to be the end of your time together. But small groups are wonderful and they're really effective, and it means people being willing to commit to them and to find room in their life for something new or for something that's not already in the schedule. So that's my pitch to all of you, to start thinking about making room in your life and in your schedule for that kind of support. And there's no better argument for it than Marge's story. So let's, oh yes, ma'am.
I'd like to say too, with all the experience that you are all accumulating by coming to these sessions, you are already leaders. And so that's definitely something that is needed with a successful small group ministry, is leadership. So pray and think about how you'd be willing to maybe come forward and be a leader in the fall for a short period of time. It'll be a 3 or 4 week experience, but the more leaders we have, the more people we can connect with the small group ministry.
Yeah, so Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck.
I didn't volunteer.
Yes, you did. Let's thank Marge one more time. Thank you.
Were you in the Army?